When asked what kind of man Diogenes of Sinope was, Plato didn't mince words. He called him a Socrates gone mad. Today, modern academia often leans into that exact caricature. It is easy to reduce Diogenes to a crude, shameless provocateur who performed stunts in the street, entirely disconnected from the serious business of theoretical philosophy. But that reading misses the central operating principle of his life. Diogenes was not exhibiting madness. He was practicing a relentless, almost aggressive form of hyper-rationality. In the Cynic tradition, you do not build ethical models on parchment. The primary text of your philosophy is the life you actually live, and the arguments you sustain face-to-face in the public square. His entire trajectory started with a scandal in his home city of Sinope. He was exiled because of a crime involving the intentional adulteration or physical defacing of the state's currency. Historical records debate whether it was Diogenes or his father who actually ruined the coins, but regardless of who struck the blow, the act of defacing the currency became the exact blueprint for his philosophy. He spent the rest of his life defacing the artificial values of political society, destroying human invention to expose the raw, underlying truth of nature. After his exile, Diogenes relocated to Athens. Immediately, he ran into friction with the standard expectations of how a civilized citizen ought to live. He initially attempted to secure a conventional cottage, but when the man he hired took too long to arrange the property, Diogenes simply lost patience with the process. Instead of waiting, he took up residence inside a pithos, a massive ceramic tub, located right at the Metron, an active civic and religious center. The catalyst for this radical shift in housing was his observation of a simple mouse. Watching the animal scurry across the ground, he realized the mouse had no need for a cottage, formal shelter, or any of the comforts Athenians obsessed over. It simply adapted to the environment it was in. This observation formed the basis of his legendary ascesis, or training. Diogenes deliberately subjected himself to the harsh elements to condition his body and mind to survive any circumstance. By stripping away the artificial requirements of a comfortable life, he proved the bedrock axiom of Cynicism. You can only align with nature when you no longer rely on the city-state to survive. Diogenes originally attached himself to Antisthenes, a teacher known for strict asceticism, but Diogenes took his teacher's private discipline and weaponized it through relentless public action. When another philosopher, Hegesias, asked to borrow his writing tablets to study, Diogenes immediately scolded him. He told Hegesias that choosing written rules over actual physical training was like choosing to look at a picture of painted figs instead of eating real ones. A theoretical ethical model is useless if it exists only on paper. True understanding requires direct, verbal confrontation and the physical endurance to back up your arguments. Diogenes brought this physical aggression directly into Plato's academy, systematically dismantling their abstract definitions. When Plato famously defined a human being as a biped and featherless animal, the academy applauded. Diogenes responded by bursting into the lecture hall and throwing a plucked fowl onto the floor, announcing, "Here is Plato's human being." The presentation of the fowl functioned as a strict epistemological critique. Diogenes proved in real time that abstract definitions instantly collapse when forced to confront physical reality. The frequent charges of madness leveled against him stem directly from his scandalous public behavior, specifically his habit of eating right in the middle of the Athenian marketplace. When locals reproached him for breaking this social taboo, his defense was entirely literal. He ate in the marketplace because that is precisely where he felt hungry. His logic operated on a strict rule. If an action fulfills a natural biological need, and it is acceptable to perform in private, then society lacks the logical authority to render it shameful in public. He applied this exact same framework to his most indecent public acts. When criticized, he calmly replied that he wished curing his hunger was as easy as rubbing his empty stomach. Diogenes openly mocked the idea of his own madness, using a simple anatomical demonstration. If you walk down the street extending your middle finger, people will call you crazy. But if you extend your little finger, no one cares. The physical difference between the two gestures is fractions of an inch. It is society that assigns a completely irrational weight to one over the other. Because social conventions are inherently arbitrary and contradictory, they hold no weight. For Diogenes, biological nature remains the only mathematically sound standard for human behavior. This rigid adherence to reason led to his most famous public demonstration. Diogenes was seen walking through the crowded streets in broad daylight, holding a lit lamp. As he navigated the sunlit market, he announced to the crowd around him, "I am searching for a human being." In Cynic ontology, biological existence does not guarantee humanity. A true human is someone who acts strictly in accordance with logic and their own natural state. He needed a lamp in the daylight because, by his rigorous standards, the philosophical human being was entirely absent from the Athenian population. He viewed human conduct through a harsh lens. Individuals must either allow reason to guide their conduct, or they require a halter. If you cannot follow logic, you operate on blind passion, and like an animal, you require the leash of social conventions and laws to keep you from destroying yourself. To live completely in accordance with reason requires letting go of the leash and transcending the boundaries of the city-state entirely. This wild, uncompromising independence earned him his title. The word cynic comes from the Greek kinakos, which translates directly to dog-like. The dog became his perfect avatar. A dog ignores social hierarchy, has no use for artificial wealth, and exists entirely in the present moment. This philosophy was put to the ultimate test when Diogenes was captured by pirates while traveling and dragged to a slave market. When he was put on the auction block in Corinth and asked what skills he had, his reply was absolute: govern men. A wealthy man named Xeniades purchased him. Within days, Diogenes took complete control over the education of Xeniades' sons, subjecting them to his strict ascetic conditioning. He quickly became a cherished master of the household. Without shedding his captive status, he entirely inverted the hierarchy of his enslavement. His time in Corinth proved the definitive mechanism of his philosophy. A slave who requires absolutely nothing is demonstrably freer and holds more power than a master chained by desires, social obligations, and property. Throughout his life, Diogenes employed a ruthless formula. He opposed courage to fortune, nature to convention, and pure reason to passion. This reduction extended to his very last worldly possessions. For years, he carried a simple terracotta bowl to drink from. But one day, he watched a child walk up to a stream, cup his bare hands, and drink the water. Seeing this, Diogenes threw his bowl away in disgust. He realized he was carrying an artificial tool for a task that biology had already solved. While the scholars back in Plato's academy comfortably debated the abstract nature of virtue, Diogenes was actively executing it in the dirt. Firm, concluding tone. Plato got the diagnosis backwards. Diogenes was Socrates taken to his absolute, unyielding mathematical conclusion.